welcome to tonight's episode of Beyond Focus TV. I'm your host, Lydia Patel, and as always, we have a very special guest for you. I have Colette Ellis, founder of InStep Consulting. She'll be with us for the next 30 minutes, so stay with us. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. Beyond Focus TV allows you to discuss contemporary topics affecting the Caribbean people on both a national and local level. The show features informed guests who offer insight, debate, and evaluate various issues. Beyond Focus TV builds on the station's mission to provide useful information to the Caribbean people in New York and abroad. Beyond Focus TV, where our viewing audience can get educated, informed, and empowered. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. I'm Lydia Patel, sitting down here with Colette Ellis, founder of InStep Consulting. Colette, welcome back to Beyond Focus TV.
It's a pleasure to be here again.
Thank you. Yes, you were here a couple of years back. We're doing a follow-up interview, but for those of you who didn't catch the first one, don't worry. We'll capture everything straight from the top again. So it's great to have you back here. I love to see females who are doing very positive things, and of course, with your company, InStep, you've been doing quite a bit of work.
Right.
So let's take it from the top. Let's go all the way back. Let's talk about your background a little bit. Before
Sure.
you even founded the company, let's talk about you and how you got started.
Sure, absolutely. So I actually come to all of this from a training and HR background. So used to work in corporate America, also did some e-learning consulting with Fortune 500 companies. So basically starting my business was taking that foundation of learning with doing organizational development, capacity building, leadership training with different organizations, working for other companies. And I thought, back in 2004, let's see if we can find a way to make this a going concern. And here we are, almost 11 years later.
Applying all the knowledge
Absolutely.
that you've gained yourself. What led you to that interest of working, I guess you could say, from HR and then branching into all those different things? Because it all stemmed from that one thing, but there's so many other different avenues.
Well, like I said, so it was really, and the business has evolved. I'm not doing the exact same thing that I was 10 years ago because, you know, when you start a business, you can't just be stagnant, right? You have to be able to grow and evolve and change with the times. So looking at what are the things that I'm passionate about. So I'm passionate about people, I'm passionate about organizations. I really love helping people to think about things in a different way. So that has led me to find different opportunities, both with corporate clients as well as a lot of work with nonprofit clients, and now even more recently working with startup companies. So I've really had the opportunity to work across a wide spectrum of organizations.
That is great. And then in 2004, you decided to take the step. When you decided that officially and you went full throttle, how are you feeling at first?
Well, to be honest, I was actually, it was definitely a risk, but to me, the opportunity to start a business was more compelling to me than actually even staying or trying to find a new opportunity. So just before I started my business, I actually had been downsized from another corporate organization, and so I thought, like I said, I gave myself the end of the year for 2004, thinking if I'm still, still have a roof over my head and I'm still have revenue coming in, then let's see if we can make this a business that lasts, for the next couple of years. So I really wasn't sure. I didn't know then that I'd be sitting here with you right now, talking 11 years later. But I knew that problem solving is something that I enjoy, and I really loved having conversations with people about specific problems, as opposed to, say, maybe trying to interview for a job where you need to be able to shape and mold yourself to fit within an organization. And and people have different preferences, so nothing against that, but I really felt this calling to be the problem solver, to go after other people's problems.
That is great. Let's talk about the early beginnings of InStep.
Oh my goodness, okay.
The early beginnings, what did it first start with? How many clients? McDonald's started off with one chain and now they're thousands of chains. So let's talk about the early days and, of course, what it evolved to now.
Sure. So a lot of it was really trying to figure out what would be the best thing to offer. So it was a lot of trial and error about what types of programs or what types of training or even what types of services that the market wanted. Although I don't think that I framed it in that way. That's sort of, more 11 years later speak in terms of thinking about the market. It really was just finding like, okay, who's going to hire me really was the main sort of thrust of things. And probably one of my first larger contracts was a public sector contract, and I actually did a lot of work flowing and stemming out of what happened around 9/11. So doing a lot of focus group facilitation to help the communities reshape Lower Manhattan. So it's actually really interesting to me now to see how the city has evolved over this time, and now we have the museum. But that was kind of one of the first early projects that I worked on, and so that was personally compelling for me.
Absolutely, that's a big job.
And to be part of that history is really kind of exciting.
How did you feel when you landed a public contract? Because those are the good ones to get, actually.
Yeah.
And to be somewhat at the time unknown.
Right.
Relatively new, and to get that type of contract, that's something very big.
Yeah, and actually it started based on volunteer opportunities. So I had been doing some volunteering, doing that same sort of work, facilitation work, and someone said, this agency is going to put out a contract, and you should put a bid out on the contract. And I even what does that mean?
What does that mean? How do I put a bid
How do I bid
out?
on a contract, right? So, but yeah, so part of that is also understanding that sometimes just being in the right place at the right time can at least open the door. And then, of course, I still have to do all the legwork of bidding and writing the proposal and all of that. But so sometimes things like that can happen in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And when you started off, yourself and any other staff, or just you?
No, and over the years, that's kind of evolved. I've formed teams for specific client projects, so I've been able to be nimble in that way in terms of not building a full infrastructure before it was needed.
Anything major looking back when you first started and being like, why did I do this?
Or something that I would do differently now, or
I guess you could say that. Everyone has their good days, their bad days. Every company, they say if you survive the first 3 years,
right.
Usually they give you a 3-year rule. Don't bail out before 3 years.
Right.
Give the first 3. Don't even expect to make a profit the first 3 years.
Right.
And year 4, you're supposed to be able to see growth and development.
Right.
So for yourself, those first 3 years, working for yourself, essentially.
I think it was there was a lot of discipline that I was able to actually apply from the consulting opportunity that I had just prior. So the concept of and this predates co-working spaces and all the different spaces that we have now that actually make that communal work environment, even if you're not working for the same company, that you can come together and at least be around other entrepreneurs or other startup founders. So back then, I think it was that sense of how do you stay focused even when you may be working from your dining room table, right? So because
true.
there was no WeWork, there was no Wix, there was no Impact Hub. So the choices then are: do you invest in the infrastructure? Try to get an office. So I chose not to do that, and I chose to keep, the resources close. So it meant that I needed to be very disciplined about how I structured my day and making sure that, that I was doing work and getting things done, because, again, without that immediate accountability, there can sometimes be that sense of, I'll get to it.
Absolutely.
So I was able to keep myself motivated and keep that same structure as if I had been working for someone else, even though I was working in my business.
In your own business. Do you prefer working for yourself now? Like, would you say, you know what, I would still own a business, but go back to work for somebody else, or you really got used to that flexibility of, you wouldn't say calling your own shots, but in a certain essence, you don't have a supervisor. You don't have to get performance reviews and different things like that, even though clients may review you, of course.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, I think, right, so that, and that's a little bit of the myth, in that, as an entrepreneur, you never really get to completely call your own shots, because we still do answer to clients. You may answer to board or mentor, depending on the structure of your company. So, but the lifestyle, it can be, what's the word? I don't want to say addictive, but yeah, there is that. There is that enjoyability factor. I mean, which, so it's a trade-off, right? So, give up the flexibility for something that's more stable, or maintain the flexibility and still recognize the fact that I'll need to hunt and gather for pretty much for the rest of the time.
Well, hold that thought. We'll be right back. I'm Lydia Patel. You're watching Welcome back. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. I'm Lydia Patel, sitting here with Colette Ellis, founder of InStep Consulting. Colette, we covered a lot in the first segment and really got a good background foundation of how we got you to this point today. Why consulting? So many different fields you could open up. I know it is stemmed from a little bit of being in that background, but deciding to do consulting, for those who may not understand what consulting really entails, why don't you give us a little bit of detail?
Sure. Well, I like the variety. I like the opportunity to be able to get inside of different organizations and be able to help them strategize and help them problem solve and help them, get team buy-in, or to get, to think of new ways to approach their market, or to come up with new strategies to create revenue. So that's that sense of variety, and not necessarily working with one organization either at a time or for, I don't want to say that we don't focus on one organization at a time, but I like the opportunity to kind of be able to see inside multiple organizations. So that was what attracted me to that. And then even including coaching into the mix, being able to work with individual leaders or small teams of leaders. So again, still being able to see multiple perspectives, and sometimes often being able to create those sort of mastermind environments for groups to be able to come together and really be able to make decisions and move forward.
At one time, how many projects can you have simultaneously going?
I think it depends on the structure of what they are. So if it's training programs, you can have multiple training programs going on, because maybe they're only half day, 1 day, 2 day, or max maybe even 5-day programs. So you could have multiple projects going on at a time. If it's a consulting opportunity, or if there's something where we're doing sort of strategic work, or meeting with board members, or meeting with teams on a regular basis, then it may limit the number of projects at one time, because you want to make sure that you're giving that direct attention to an organization.
Right, and that does count for a lot. I mean, companies do shell out a lot of money to consulting firms, and not all of them are great. There are people who claim to do consulting, and that's not always the case. Consulting is such a big umbrella, such a wide branch, and so many things are under. So specifically, what type of consulting do you focus on with InStep?
So do a lot of strategy work. So in the nonprofit world, that often means strategic planning, working with their boards of directors, helping them to look at where their organization has been, where they'd like to see the organization move forward in the future. Does that vision align with current programs and services, or do things need to change and adjust? Also doing work within organizations around team building, and sort of looking at the culture of the organization, and making sure that, again, the culture aligns with the programs and the services and the future direction of where the organization wants to go. So it's a lot of the people stuff, I like to say, as well as some of the strategy work as well.
And of course, I don't think there's a limit on how big a company could be for you to take on a contract. Is there a minimum? Like, what's the smallest company that you would work with, that if someone were to come to you, if one of our viewers is a small business owner, do you consult with small businesses as well as large companies as well?
I have consulted with small businesses, and I said nonprofit organizations as well. I think So it would probably depend on the nature of the engagement. So if someone was a solopreneur, then maybe that's more of a coaching assignment, because they're sort of wanting to look at maybe some personal either work-life issues, or maybe they're looking at do I make this decision to sort of jump into entrepreneurship or not? So that individual leader perspective would be probably more of a coaching assignment. And then from a small business perspective, probably, maybe 15, 20 employees or more, sort of having that sense of have had some momentum, have had some growth, and want to keep maintaining and sustaining the organization into the future.
Great. Let's talk about Fortune 500. That's always a hot topic. Fortune 500 major companies. You've had the pleasure to work with a few of them. So tell us about that experience.